Sri Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome viewers to another episode of mental health and the challenges that's affecting children today. In our first episode on this subject, we were joined by Mital Thanki, CEO and founder of the SPARK Academy, who's also a science, maths and English teacher. And we were also fortunate enough to be joined by Sunil Naphray, who is an NLP practitioner, English teacher, as well as an executive life coach. So, Mithil and Sunil, thank you both for returning to the show to discuss this very interesting subject.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we had some interesting feedback from our viewers and parents from the last show, and they were particularly interested in the tactics that parents can have, or whoever's looking after children that have mental health problems. So you mentioned briefly in our first episode on particular tactics. So just from your experience, what do you find is most helpful in whether it's a strategy or whether it's a long-term action to help children with mental health problems?
Yeah, I think it is about having a strategy, having approaches, and also being aware of certain techniques as well. In terms of having a particular strategy, it's so important to be able to have that conversation about mental health. It's okay to talk about our psychological well-being. It's okay not to be okay. It is absolutely fine. There's nothing to worry about. If there is an issue with having with thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and it's affecting their behavior, it's having an impact on them in terms of their well-being, their schooling, how they are in general. So really, I think the first thing I wanted to mention to all the viewers, it's so important to say it's okay for us to talk about mental health and emotional well-being. This is what the schools are doing anyway. The schools are embedding it in all aspects of their work and the whole ethos of the school. So really, it should also be part and parcel of what we're trying to do with our children within the home as well. So to really make it completely acceptable, and also we need to also be very clear that even though we have physical health, which a lot of people identify with in terms of weight management, physical stamina, trying to make sure that we look after what we eat and our diet, etc. But we should give equal, maybe even more credence to mental health, and also the fact that mental health as an aspect of health actually exists. It is an absolute reality. So we need to make sure that mental health is really up there alongside physical health, and we need to keep both in check, and we need to do things to help us with both aspects of health. So we need to make sure there is equality in all aspects of health, particularly between emotional well-being, mental health, and also physical health as well. So with physical health, for example, as we are aware that if we're running a little bit fast, that our heart beat will then go a bit faster. The same goes if we're going to be eating too much. It's going to possibly have an impact on how we're feeling. We're feeling bloated. We might put on weight, etc. So we're aware of the physical consequences of doing things with our body. Also, so are people aware of the impact of what their thoughts are having on them? How it's making them feel? Is it making them feel sad, unhappy, irritated? Is it making them feel very annoyed? And then how those feelings are then translated into possible decisions that could then result in actions and maybe consequences, good, bad, or otherwise. So this is why we need to give equal, even more credence to mental health, physical health, by making sure through conversations and normalizing it. So whichever way you want to look at this, it has to be normalized within the household as it is in schools and colleges, wherever we have children and young people. So the same should be applying to the home as well. So I would say really in terms of making sure that we really open up those conversations. I mean, there are specific techniques like you could use in terms of make sure you have circle time. For example, that now and then, before or after dinner, or certain times within the household, that you all congregate and then everyone talks about how they feel. I feel this, I feel that. I mean, in schools, they show them pictures of, do you feel sad? Do you feel happy? Do you feel angry? Tell me, if so, why? So having a visual prompt there might really be very helpful. And also, it's really important to be able for the children to also express what they're grateful for, because we're not just talking about identifying negative mental health issues, but also celebrating positive mental health when they do feel good, when they do feel like celebrating, when someone has said something fantastic, we want to celebrate that. So, what's been brilliant about their day, what's been fantastic, and again, a lot of the techniques are around the interaction, around the conversations that actually happens. It's really important that those conversations happen and they're carefully managed, and also the children feel supported, but also parents feel confident in actually having the ability to be able to do that as well.
Okay.
I mean, I agree. Sorry, I was just going to say, Ravi, that I agree with what Sunil was saying about having that open and honest conversation around mental health. However, sometimes that's not the easiest, with your children. Sometimes children find it really hard to express themselves. So that's quite common, especially in younger children as well. And because they're not able to verbalize how they feel. So if your child finds it difficult to express themselves verbally, you can use a really simple technique. You can use toys, any objects around you. You can use artwork, art materials, for example. And you can ask your child a really simple thing. You can ask them, show me how you're feeling. If they're struggling to verbalize how they're feeling, just say, look, show me how you're feeling. And you'll find that sometimes those children will play out those scenarios using their toys, or they might produce artwork, which gives you more insight into their feelings and emotions. And another thing that I would actually say as well is that it's really important that parents also practice and model good habits in mental health. We know that children learn from copying what they see around them. So I would say it's really important for parents to take care of their mental health and well-being so that their children know what good habits will look like. So an example, like Sunil mentioned, having that circle time moment, for example, having a designated time during the day where you practice a well-being technique together is really beneficial. So an example would be practicing something known as breath work. I'm a massive advocate of breath work, and breath work means it's just breathing techniques. There's loads of benefits regarding breath work, which includes, boosting of your immune system. It helps increase your confidence. It helps you process your emotions and your feelings. It can help healing pain and trauma. So there's so many benefits of being able to regulate the way you breathe. And an example would be a very simple technique known as the 4-7-8 breathing technique, where you breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds and hold the breath for 7 seconds, and then breathe out, exhale out through your mouth for 8 seconds. And when you are breathing out, you've got to make this whooshing sound. So that really helps to sort of regulate your breathing, calm any nerves, and stay in the moment, be in the present. Because a lot of the time, anxieties and fears are based on something that's happened yesterday or something that's happened in the past. Anxieties are also based on something that could be happening in the future. So if you're by doing these techniques together as a family, say before you eat breakfast together, for example, is a great way to model that behavior, and a great way for your children to realize exactly the techniques that they can use when they're feeling like they're not coping, for example. And another thing I would actually like to say is that, when you are spending that time together as a family, be in the present, be in that moment, and give your full attention to the children without having phones or anything like that there. Unless obviously you decide to take a picture to capture that moment, that's absolutely fine. But in terms of using social media, etc., I would say, try and model that good behavior, and in time your children will learn to be in the moment and be present.
Okay, so to help someone be in the moment and be present when parents are at home with the children after children have finished school for the day, and at the moment school is at home. So
Yeah.
after after a day's learning and teaching, how do you switch off from social media? And just to make clear to the viewers that no one here is against social media, but we're simply sharing our views on how you can balance your day. So, just in terms of balancing the day, how can children and parents balance the day so that they can have that circle time or that time to themselves?
Yes, thank you very much, Ravi. I mean, yeah, I totally support what you're saying in terms of the use of social media and digital technology. We've obviously seen the huge benefits of it throughout this period in keeping connected, keeping in touch, etc. But like I think in all things in life, there just has to be an appropriate balance. Okay. Now, if I can just talk a little bit about Howard Gardner's 8 multiple intelligences, because with social media, it only taps into a few of them. I mean, the actual intelligence include physical intelligence, linguistic intelligence, logical, spatial, interpersonal, intrapersonal, and also naturalistic and musical intelligence. And we also have to think, well, if we're actually going to be making sure that our child has a very balanced home life that is not dominated by social media, then certain questions need to be asked as to whether the child is getting the most out of their experience after school. So questions like, for example, is my child getting enough exercise or eating healthily? That would be the physical intelligence. Is my child more quiet than usual, or have they lost their interest in reading? So that would go on to linguistic intelligence. Has my child lost their interest in doing puzzles or board games? That would be that would be logical. And also spatial intelligence. My child used to like doing artwork, or they're like used to do, things which are very creative. That would be spatial intelligence. Interpersonal. Have they stopped talking to their friends on the phone where they used to? Naturalistic. Have they lost their interest in maybe just going outside for some fresh air? Are they all kind of consumed in the one space, the one physical space? And also, have they stopped listening to their favorite music or singing? Some of them may be, talented singers and also musicians. Has that all stopped? So I think with these 8 multiple intelligences, we can just do a bit of a check on asking those questions of ourselves, talking to the children. And so let the children actually discover. It's so important, rather than us telling the children explicitly, put your phones away, stop playing your PS4, etc., etc., is to open up a discussion. And this is so important in terms of having everlasting change and changing of mindsets and attitudes, is to have those conversations and then to ask those questions of the children and allow them to voice their opinions. And some may say, well, I do need my social media for this. That's fine, but also, can you balance it out with doing a bit of exercise, or for you to maybe play your musical instrument, maybe do a little skit, in the lounge after we finish dinner or something. So I think it's so important that social media has its role, and I think it's important to be able to set boundaries. Okay, now whether those boundaries are just understood as norms and values in the way we run the household, or whether you make it more explicit by writing some kind of guidance, some guidelines for your children, whether you have to be able to put something on the bedroom wall or something as a visual reminder. So I think it's about changing, if necessary, maybe just adopting a certain culture where social media is a part of it, the digital technology is a part of it. I mean, I've been joking with lots of my educational colleagues that we may have to rewrite Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the theory of motivation, and we need to put digital technology, Wi-Fi, beneath the physiological needs of having food, having shelter and clothing, for us to be able to then self-actualize, at some point in terms of exceeding our own potential. So we can't deny the importance, but then with anything like this, it's about just having those conversations, and there's no one set rule for one family or one household. It all depends on the individual child, the parents, what is going to work, as long as there's some kind of a balance at the end.
I think it's also really important to understand why your children want to go on social media, and I think this should also resonate with parents as well. So although social media is fantastic because we're all more connected now than ever before with people across the globe. We're all part of networks and we can pick up new skills and new learning as well. We do know, and I think collectively we can appreciate that there are certain downsides to social media. So current research held by the Centre for Mental Health have found that 5% of young people are addicted to social media. Now, when we're talking about addiction, we're talking about the need for that instant gratification and the release of dopamine. So dopamine is basically a chemical in the brain that's associated with pleasure and reward. And so that desire for that hit of dopamine, and if that desire is combined with the failure to gain instant gratification, and by that I mean, how many likes have I got on my post? How many people have commented on my post? That causes people to refresh their social media feeds quite regularly. Now, as we can appreciate, this is not just a problem with young people. This is a problem amongst us adults as well. And what's actually worrying is that if that instant gratification is not met, then what happens is that as a result of not getting enough likes, as a result of not getting enough comments, for example, children and adults can basically internalize beliefs, such as, hey, you know what, I've not got that many likes, I'm not popular, or nobody thought my joke was witty or funny, so that means I'm not funny. And those ideas and those thoughts get embedded deep into the unconscious or subconscious mind. And that's when children will start believing that of themselves. And so the whole aspect of getting likes and getting posts, getting people to post on your wall, etc., it gives children, in particular, a sense of validation. And if they're not validated by their peers or their friends, then that could lead to all sorts of other issues as well, such as body image issues, low self-esteem, etc. And those things then go on to amplify feelings of loneliness and feelings of anxiety. And one phenomenon I would say that a lot of people are experiencing is FOMO. So this whole idea of the fear of missing out, and that also adds to loneliness, especially at the moment. With the pandemic, children want to stay connected with their friends and with their peers. And when they are back at school, you might find that you'll have a conversation where your children will say, hey, I want to join this new social media platform, and you're going to have to start battling with your children about either going on it or not going on it. And the reason why they're feeling this way is because they are experiencing FOMO. So, it's getting that balance. It's that whole idea of them wanting to stay connected with their friends. They don't want to miss out. They don't want to feel socially disconnected from them either. And we've got to remember that we're all human beings. So we love, group interaction. So having that social exclusion from their friends can have damaging psychological impacts on the children. So it's about getting a balance. It's about sort of having those healthy discussions, as Sunil mentioned, about the right timings in which you could utilize social media, when we need to switch off, and setting those rules and guidelines and keeping it visual. But I think as a parent, I think it's really important to understand why the kids are behaving the way they are. So it helps you understand where they're coming from a little bit. But I do believe that a balance is required. And finally, I think that I think Sunil mentioned this point, being clear about your feelings, understanding how you're feeling can be measured against, say, for example, a metric. So your phone tells you how much screen time you've had. So if you're able to write a journal, for example, and look at the feelings and emotions you've been feeling in that week, and then compare it against, the amount of social media time you've had, you'll start building up analytics for yourself and realizing what's working for you, what's not, and you'll start to realize, actually, do I need to decrease the amount of screen time that I have? And you can set yourself targets. So you could say, right, next week I'm going to try and decrease my screen time by 10 minutes and then up that time every single week. So again, like I mentioned, it's all about balance, understanding the whys and coming up with solutions that work with you and your family.
Okay, and this is a very interesting and important subject. And with just over a few minutes left, what I wanted to ask on behalf of the viewers is what counselling services are available, whether someone's at a public state-funded school or whether they're in a private school. What help can they get from organisations to deal with mental health problems for children?
Yes, I mean, if I just mentioned that there needs to be enough red flags which have been identified by maybe the school, by the family, that this actually is not just low mood, it's probably bordering on to depression, anxiety. So at that point, either through the GP or through the school, they can be referred to CALMS, which is Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service. And then they will then be dealt with by a CALMS practitioner who would either offer counselling, psychotherapy, family therapy, depending on the actual issue itself. So normally CALMS is the actual NHS part of children and adolescent mental health services. So that would obviously be available. But also, it is obviously the parents' choice that if they wanted to go down a more private route, then really they could then go on the counselling directory, and they could then find a private practitioner, a counsellor. Obviously, they would have to be BCAP registered, and that way, then they'd be able to get a referral, and then they'll be able to then talk to the therapist again, whether it's a counsellor, family therapist, or a psychotherapist, depending on the actual issues in hand. So they could either go either NHS or private. They actually needed to talk out, then they can either approach their school or they can approach an organization called Young Minds, and they're available online. And they also have links with Childline, Relate, organizations called The Mix or Kahoot. They can actually help to provide confidential time for the child to talk openly, honestly, outside of the household environment. And also in terms of private as well, there are also coaches as well that are actually available to help the child, the parents, to look at things like developing techniques for building resilience, building confidence, building their own kind of understanding of particular issues, moving themselves forward from where they are, without having going down a kind of a therapeutic counseling route, but more of a coaching and training type route to then look at different behaviors and techniques that they could employ as they go about their day-to-day life. With counseling, it's more about awareness raising and discovery and resolution, but then the coaching route might be more about learning, technique, and transformation and growth. So those are the main kind of areas there.
And I concur with Sunil really about this. If you feel like your child is struggling and if it's taking longer on the NHS, then my advice would be, don't hesitate to seek, independent professional advice if your finances allow. And just want to sort of point out that time is of the essence, and you must see that it as an investment into your child's mental health and well-being, and not look at it as a cost. So think about it. I mean, you probably send your child for tutoring because you want them to do better. You want their career outcomes to be better for the future. So if you think of, going to a private practitioner, you should consider it, because your child will experience, firsthand transformative life skills that will help them deal with any mental health issues in the future as well, and help them to cope better long run.
Okay. All right. That's some very useful advice. Thank you, Mital, and thank you, Sunil. And just before we conclude the show, any final thoughts to our audience?
I really just, just be as open as you can with anything to do with, a child's emotional well-being, and really to start having those conversations, because normally it's the conversations that pave the way, that actually pave the way for other things to happen. And there are external organizations out there that can help, but it's all about being comfortable to have those conversations first and foremost. And the school is there to help. The school has to work with certain principles that are also checked with Ofsted as well. So a parent could ask their child's school, well, can you tell me what what is the school doing about mental health and emotional well-being for my child? Now, the school can either reel off all the 8 principles that they have to follow nationally, or they can just go into specific examples that are relevant to the child. But yeah, just have those conversations.
Okay.
And I'd say, model those behaviors, work together, and learn together. Learn great mental health practices together.
Okay. Well, thank you, Sunil and Mital, for taking time out in joining us, and to the viewers as well. Please feedback on any thoughts or questions from what we've discussed in today's show on mental health, specifically impacting children in and outside school. Our email address, info@sikhchannel.tv. Please also feedback with any further questions that you may have for both Sunil and Mital. And please take care. And we look forward to welcoming you to another segment on our health show. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Sri Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.